Gerang, kampung Gerang, kampung jamaah Gerang. Kampung Gerang.
Where you posted you dah posted?
Dan buat suka macam ni tu baju letak.
Boleh mama. Ayat apa?
Maulana.
Dah apa?
Kita rahsia lah. Apa?
Oh, ni kita hal-hal dah.
Bukan senang nak dapat kita tu.
Kali warna dulu.
Kita stress juga tu lah. Rahsia. Maulana. Pergi pun itu aja pak. Itulah Allah lah, Allah bawa. Jam lah, jam.
Wali pun. Itu tak wali. Ini wali bongo. Ini wali bongo. Tak sulit. Ada mana tu apa nak ada mana tu betul. Ya, apa wali hati.
dalam event harapan ni. Finally kita kena kita taruh di pada acting ni. Tahu lah. Kita dia tak cukup. Lalu dia pada jaki jauh punya 100% jauh dia projek. Saya jauh kita tak boleh kerja. I nak buat. Where money you finish it. Dia dia buat competition dalam ni. Sebab kita organik lah. Dia memang balikan dia. Tapi mana? I think insyaAllah lah. Kita jalan. Kita finish it. Kita tengah nak. I saw yang dia lama. Tapi lagi banding-bandingnya kita dah ada masjid. Supaya ada sisi berkantat lah. So, what do you know?
This year,
tapi dia base KL lah. Macam bangsa kan?
whenever he's on his face, he's back and forth and moving to
Dia tu datang sana dia macam dia jadi imam subuh kan. Friday dia. Dia hafal kan macam ni kita kena bagi. Time ni imam pun kadang-kadang Alhamdulillah, sama. Allahumma shalli ala Muhammad. Apa ni dia? Mudah berkat. Ha? Abang dah. Oh, okey. Abang nama? Oh, hebat. Betul ke? Oh, nak yang ini lah kan? Oh, ini. Tak apa lah. Betul. Jangan tinggal. Jawab tu
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallam. Alhamdulillah, all praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His guidance and the opportunity that He has bestowed upon us to be in this blessed gathering in the blessed month. First of all, on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to apologize for the delayed start of this program. And inshallah, tonight we are also honored and privileged to have Imam Afroz, who's traveled all the way from Australia to be with us, and he will deliver a talk on self-well and be well. Imam Afroz was trained as an architect. He is also he studied extensively all over the world, and under the guidance of Sheikh Hamza Yusuf in the US. He was also studied in Mauritania under Sheikh Rabitul Hajj, and also in Yemen. He studied under the guidance of Habib Umar bin Hafiz. All his free time, he has special interest in ecology and the preservation of the surrounding environment. So Imam Afroz is also a president and the founder of Al-Ghazi Institute in Australia. Without further ado, I would like to invite Imam Afroz to deliver his talk on self-well, be well. At the end of the talk, we will take some questions from you. For those who doesn't have pen or papers to write the questions down, you can text, WhatsApp me the questions. You may take my phone number, is 010-540-5403. I repeat, 010-540-5403. Please do not abuse that number because that's my personal number. Anyway, before we invite Imam Afroz to deliver a talk, because this event is actual collaboration between Hawi Al-Khara or short out and Al-Ghazi Institute, and obviously we would like to know a little bit about what Al-Ghazali Institute is all about. If I could ask Sidi Jalal to give a brief summary of the institute.
Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. We're very honored to be here and to see this blessed gathering with a lot of people, mashallah, a lot of new faces. I won't take much of your time. Al-Ghazali Center is an organization that was founded many years ago by Imam Afroz Ali himself back in Sydney, Australia. And alhamdulillah, it is now revived with a fresher look, mashallah, and it has been established in many other places than just Australia, meaning that it's not only in the different cities of Australia like Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, but it is as well in New Zealand, in Auckland, in smaller towns in New Zealand as well, the small town of Hawera, and I'm sure some people will recognize themselves, and as well here, alhamdulillah, in Kuala Lumpur since a bit more than a year now. Al-Ghazali Center essentially has three objectives. The first one is to empower people with knowledge, with sacred sciences, going from Fardu Ain, the basic fiqh, aqidah, and going into some higher learnings like usul al-fiqh and kalam, etc. At the same time, Al-Ghazali Center, because it is mainly established in non-Muslim countries or non-Muslim majority countries, it is trying to approach it in a way that it brings positive citizenship, that people actually act upon that knowledge positively, and that they contribute to the society positively as well, and that they're seen as true Muslims, people who actually bring benefit to others. And the third one is the fact that we, all the knowledge that we have and all these things that we do are actually free of charge. These are things that we, that what we call breaking barriers, knowledge without barriers, and we go all the way to the ends of earth. We go really everywhere, from South Africa, Malaysia, we go even, in places in Indonesia, etc. So we try as much as possible to reach out to as many people as possible. And Imam Afroz himself travels quite extensively. He goes to Turkey for the Rehla with Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, and he travels all the time. I think his second home is airport lounges or airport terminals, mashallah. So he's always on the go. So we are here, we are in KL, and there's some of the members are here. There's Sidi Hadith in front, and there is myself as well. So if anyone has any question that they would like to ask, inshallah, we're more than happy and more than pleased to answer them, and we are here at your service. And alhamdulillah, this is something that we hope we will see more often, collaboration between organizations, inshallah. HAF is an organization that we really love, inshallah. This is a stepping stone in the beginning for the future. Without further ado, inshallah, I'll pass the mic to Dr. Abdullah. Assalamu alaikum.
Before we continue with the talk, do you mind if I just get all of you to move a little bit forward, please, to create extra space between the ladies and the men? Yeah. Yeah. This program is essentially not the way it is, but the way you make it to be. So I would have hoped by the end of Imam Afroz's talk, there will be lots of questions. The burning questions you can have, just either you write them down or send me the text message. I'll give you my phone number later on if you've missed it. Do you want it now again? Yeah, there's a mic for you to ask questions later on. Yeah? Okay. Imam Afroz, please have the honor. Jazakallah.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم وبسم الله ما شاء الله والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. ربنا زدنا علما ربنا زدنا علما وفهما وعبدا كاملا ربنا يسر ولا تعسر اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ونعوذ بك من علم لا ينفع ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. In getting this topic together, serving well and being well, there are so many things that needs to be spoken about, and I'm praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the short presentation here today will help us to not only understand, because I would assume that most of us understand it, but more so that we would in fact implement what we have been called to by our merciful Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also knowing that this is in fact our nature, meaning that serving well and being well is part and parcel of being a human being. And when we are not part of service, and we will speak a little bit more about what service is, then we are without a doubt missing a little bit, or probably a lot, of being a human being. And in today's world, one of the critical problems, and I was speaking to our dear teacher, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, just a few weeks ago, as to what would be the fundamental problem that we need to, as a human family, that we need to deal with. And he said that we need to be more human. And so the very artificial world that is in front of us, and we ought to be able to concede that this world that we are seeing in front of us, and we are in fact having to deal with, having to face with, we often talk about as something that is external to us, that as if we have no part in it in terms of the problems that we have created. Whether we are engineers or we are even teachers, we all have played one role or another. And I just use those two professions as an example, with too many other professions to mention, that we are in fact a contributing factor. And just around about a month ago, the scientists, there's about a 500 scientist panel that came together voting after empirical evidence testing, 500 to 0, that for the first time human beings are the cause of climate change. Now this knowledge is not new. There has been a lot of questions as to whether human beings are contributing to the problems we have in front of us, and particularly climate change in the context that I was mentioning just a few seconds ago. And this particular panel did an incredible research to ultimately come to this conclusion. And usually scientists, like Muslims, don't necessarily agree all the time. And for them to come to a 500 to 0 agreement, a consensus, that we are a direct contributing factor to the destruction of this world is very telling. But you see, the destruction of the world is no more than, in fact, a destruction, a degradation, and a loss of our own human nature. It's purely a reflection of our own state. So when we see the world out there, we need to be able to understand from that it's a sign for us to know. And I'm going to try and avoid today much of kind of a fiqhi talk about all this, because that has been done numerous times, and in fact I have talked about these kinds of topics. I want to keep this as raw and practical as possible for us to recognize that we are playing a very significant role, if not even a primary role, but a very direct role in this regard. And that means that we have to reach back into ourselves and find what it is that makes us human beings. And probably most importantly, what our purpose is here on this earth. And what I was going to do today is to look at some, if I could say, examples of the work that we do as Al-Ghazali Center, as purely as an example for us to understand that a small group of people, a small community, can in fact make a difference. Make a difference at the soul level of the human being, for them to return to, at the very least, become or feel human again. Now, it's not a philosophical statement for us to say feel to be human again. When I'm looking around over here, I see well-balanced human beings. I'm seeing that potentially nobody here is sitting and saying, I don't feel human. But I'm really hoping that you have met people like that. I'm really hoping that you have met people who cannot even identify themselves as being part of the human family. And so if we do not start to reach back to ourselves and reclaim what makes us human beings and also to fulfill our purpose, then we may not be in a state of failure immediately, but our children without a doubt will be. And as much as it is about ourselves, it's also about our children. And therefore this constant word, concept, and meaning behind it, community, constantly comes. Our family is our community, and our community must be our family. What community are you part of? Right? Some people are part of a sports community. Some people are only part of the nuclear family. Some people are part of a business community. But Islam calls us to be holistic with all permitted communities, that from which we draw good and from which we ultimately also spread that good to others. If we do not do that, then we will see more and more and more reduction degradation and elimination of well-being. One of the largest increases of medication in Malaysia, and I think it's in the top 3, is psychiatric drugs. Psychiatric drugs. People are apparently quite depressed in Malaysia. And it's not a new thing, and it's not only about Malaysia. It's the same thing from the country that I come from in Australia. It's the same thing and worse in the evil capital of the world, United States of America. It's worse. Over there, 40% at the very least are people who are on one or another kind of an antidepressant medication. Well, forget about people in the United States of America. I'm not quite sure it has yet got to Australia, for example. Really hoping it's not in Malaysia. But in America, people have their dogs on antidepressants. So everything is being affected. What is it that we are losing? And that's what I want to focus on today, for us to connect with a very important element of us being human beings, that if we were to bring this one ingredient back into our lives, back into our families' lives, back into our communities' lives, inshallah ta'ala, we will start to see a reversal from this epidemic of loss of humanity. So the first thing I wanted to talk about today is just to look at some elements. I was looking at what Sayyid Abdul Rahman Junaid Hafidullah Ta'ala mashallah designed the flyer. I was talking about me being an architect, and you know that I'm actually involved in designing. I'm not quite sure how it's true, because he doesn't lie, but I'm not quite sure how accurate it is in relation to me actually ever designing anything of any worth. Today, these days, I'm more involved in redesigning myself. That's probably a much easier task, inshallah ta'ala. And when I talk about living by design, what I mean is that due process, design, which is thought out, is actually the sunnah of our Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is also the sunnah of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That we are not random people, and we do not do random things. So if you look at anything in Islam, it has a tartib, it has an order, it has an adab. If it is for wudu, then it must be for everything else. And the Prophet ﷺ says in a hadith, he says, all matters are by their priorities. So we need to know that as Muslims, not only in the corporate world, but also, and I just use that as a term because in the corporate world we experience due process. We experience processes which actually bring about results. But when it comes to us as Muslims, whether it's organizational, communal, or even at the familial level, we become quite chaotic. And this is a problem. Our life is by design, and we need to live by design, and we need to make sure that what we in fact are outputting is actually a purpose built. It actually has a purpose behind it, rather than simply being something which is random, casual, and usually literally a kind of a fireworks of humanity. So first and foremost, this idea that actually having purpose, you can't design, you can't have due process if you don't have a purpose. One of our usuli principles is al-umuru bi-maqasadiha, that every affair is by its purposes, which is it's a derivative of the famous hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, that every matter is by its intentions. But here it's more about purposes. And this aspect of having purpose is part of our DNA. If you do not have purpose, we actually know now empirically that people's lives get affected. We now know that people who live with purpose, that have end goals, and I'll speak about end goals in a minute, but importantly that they actually have a purpose and they're working through that purpose. They are people who are attaining happiness. Happiness is attained by people who are actually living with purpose, and happy people with purpose actually live more fulfilling and longer lives. These are empirically proven. It's interesting, sad, but interesting, that we often, as Muslims, get really excited about empirical evidences, when it was probably a lot more simpler in its statement from the Prophet ﷺ. We now know that, and it's a study that was done at Stanford University in the United States of America and published in a very well-regarded journal called The Lancet. And in there we have this study of approximately 25,000 people from the age of 65 onwards in relation to their longevity, in relation to how long they're going to actually live beyond 65. And what they found was that people who had purpose, 91% of them lived longer. And interestingly, the highest number of these 91% were people of faith. Why? Because their purpose was not only about this world, but beyond this world, the hereafter. And how important it is for us to know that we have to meet our Lord. That when we forget that and we do things in a manner which is reflective of a 9-to-5 job. Imagine if we simply as human beings behaved in our lives as a 9-to-5 job, not realizing that we have a responsibility beyond our 9-to-5 job. So the analogy is that it's not only about this world being like a 9-to-5 job, that in fact what you do here, there are consequences and there are impacts beyond this world. And when people have that certitude, it is empirically proven, my dear brothers and sisters, that they are happier and they live longer. I'm not quite sure what else in this life of being a human being that a human being wants. Pursuit of happiness and a healthy and long life are two fundamental things that we all run around after every single day. Yet a fundamental element that we can achieve that at some temporal level, because ultimately true happiness is only in the hereafter. There is no, when we speak of pursuit of happiness, we have to understand it's a temporal joy. It's not a permanent happiness. This world will never make you happy. This world will never make you happy. If you're looking for happiness in this world, you will be a sad person. If you're looking for happiness in this world, you will be a sad person. What we also know through the research, that people who did not have a purpose and they simply worked a 9-to-5 job, they did not really have any other goals other than this kind of a Monday to Friday, weekends, or places like in Australia, it's like a barbecue thing, you know, and that's it. That only 60% of them live longer. And 25,000 people, if anybody has ever studied science here, that's a lot of people to study, to see this in an empirical manner. The most important is, if I can actually share some statement, and here is from the particular study, which says it is possible to engineer environments that encourage greater well-being. In other words, according to the scientists, we can actually create environments around ourselves. Here the environment means, for example, spaces that actually can encourage greater well-being, increasing meaning, that we live by meaning, purposefulness, that we would increase purposefulness during the day. That's what they're saying. Of course, we would say day and night. That if we were to increase purposefulness during the day, might just increase lifespan too. Now, as believers, and I'm hoping as human beings, I don't think our ultimate goal is really about this idea about lifespan. although it comes into our mind. And certainly as believers we don't think about just lifespan. But the point being is, it certainly comes into the equation and shows us an indicator of what's happening to us as human beings. That there is a sign in everything if we simply want to reflect on it. To the extent where those who actually do have purpose, that those who are people who live with a positive attitude towards purpose, are people who also heal quicker from, say, for example, illnesses and sicknesses. These are all empirically established. The most important is this particular aspect. Is what they've found is that there are two things that if people were involved with as the basis of their actual humanity, that they would be happy, they would have well-being, and they would also, inshallah ta'ala, live longer. Number one, selfless generosity. As if we needed to know that. Generosity is amongst the pillars of our jalb al-masalih, of our accrual of and doing beneficial actions. Generosity. But today, a very corrupt and evil faculty of science, and I apologize to say that way, but it's true, is telling us about virtues, is telling us about fada'il, is telling us about akhlaq, as if we needed empirical evidence. And secondly, servant leadership, service. Selfless generosity is about ihsan, because ihsan also means to be kind, over and beyond the idea of excellence and beauty. Ihsan is also have ihsan with others, meaning to have generous kindness towards others. So we have ihsan and service, khidmah. These are the two things that is well established now that bring well-being to people. I happen to dabble in corporate training. That's a weird one when you have an imam who walks into the corporate boardroom with a kufi on. It's quite always a very beautiful experience to actually do that. And you wouldn't believe that corporations are actually designing generosity and servant leadership programs for one reason only: to get more out of the employees. Because they know if the employees are happier, healthier, and looking forward to tomorrow, it will also contribute to the work. So they have a very different goal. They still want more from you. But our Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala has planted that as a nature in ourselves so that you could be complete as a human being. Karam, ihsan, and khidmah. The great Sidi Zarruq mentions in relation to how do we complete our ibadah, because ibadah is about servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He doesn't need our service. And we've spoken about this idea of servitude in a whole number of times in different programs. But I just want to repeat this particular element of what Sidi Zarruq says, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He says that because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in no need of anything. Ya ayyuhan nas antum fuqarahu ila Allah wallahu huwal ghaniyul hamid. He doesn't need anything. He has no need. So He doesn't need our service. But He created service in order khidmah. So you have khidmah at the creation level, which allows us to complete our ibadah at the divine level. So the vertical, which is ibadah to Allah and none other, is completed by our khidmah to creation. By living a generous and servitude world, by which you are constantly contributing good for others, to others. Why? So that they may enter into a space of safety and goodness and well-being in order for them to be able to also know their Lord. Because when people are not safe, when people are poor and struggling for food inside the house, when you have people who are in constant abuse and violence, they do not have time to think of their Lord. And there are many fiqh rules at the extreme level of these matters. Poverty, for example, one, where poverty meaning starvation, where people who are in that state in reality, the fard, the obligation of prayer is lifted off them. Because they can't even get food into their stomach. So, this is where we come in. That we become the Ibadur Rahman, the servants of the merciful, by being merciful to others. That we become the distribution agency of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We become the wasila by which the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is distributed. And this is the one main ingredient that we need to bring back into our communities. That we serve, not at a regular level, but if I could say at a daily level. And there are many ways for us to in fact serve. If I was to talk about this, I simply want to, without any sign of boasting, but purely as an example to show you what a very small community called the students of Al-Ghazali Center have been able to attain by doing small bits of generosity through their khidmah on a daily basis for the last 15 to 16 years. And I wanted to share with you some of these statistics. We are a statistical world today, so might as well understand our deen through statistics, inshallah ta'ala, and hopefully that actually gives us some visual understanding as to what can be achieved. If you look at this beautiful and noble space over here from Hawi al-Khairat, imagine if you all came together, even just monthly, and put together some food packs, and then walked over or driven over to people who need it on a monthly basis. There is potentially over here around about 150 odd people. Let me show you what those numbers start to look like. We'll come to those numbers as we go along. The first project that I wanted to talk about is a project we have called Mizan Ecosophy and Well-Being. There is a difference between ecology and ecosophy, but I'll leave that alone. That's a different problem or different issue, and we'll talk about it a bit later on. But let me share with you some of these things. Remember, I'm talking about Al-Ghazali Center, the students that's a very small community, very, very small community. Here, you have an entire country which is Muslim. An entire country, right? So let's start to project about this and see what happens. We have a environmental stewardship program, which is to plant trees and bring about health and rehabilitation to the land that has been destroyed. We have been able to plant, or they have been, I'm the lazy one, I just talk and they do all the walking. 15,000 trees have been planted. An entire riverbank has been rehabilitated and transformed, for which these work of Mizan received a National Sustainability Award. Nobody wants the award, but it certainly is a sign that some good had come from the very students who in fact took this work. The second is we have a program which is to earth our soul. We live in this very concrete world, concrete jungle. We have to earth ourselves, we have to ground ourselves. One of the things that we are told by the great Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi in his work for the prophetic tradition for medicine, is that he says that whenever you go to a new land, that you take your shoes off and touch the ground with your feet. And I read this in Chinese medicine, that they do the same thing there in relation to grounding yourself. It's almost like earthing yourself, right? Because you carry some kinds of, whether it's physical or spiritual electricity, and it has an impact when you're actually traveling around in different parts of the world, but particularly also when you live around built environments. when we're living around, concrete, pavements, office space, carpets, that we do need to earth ourselves. And so we run this program by which people do what we would call, nature walks. Very simple idea. I don't have any numbers in this regard, but they do it on this, pretty much on a monthly basis. And they're also able to, we have actually seen people, and I'll show some examples later on, we have actually seen people who have come from depressive backgrounds to be part of this Earthing the Soul program, a Mizani Kasafi program, Mizani well-being program, and they have been able to get themselves out of depression, purely being in nature. Let me share with you a particular reality in relation to nature. Does anybody know, I know you're going to be asking me questions later on, so let me ask you a question. Does anybody know when plants exhale the greatest amount of oxygen? You're going to be so surprised. I'm really hoping this increases your iman. It's on the 13th, 14th, and 15th of a lunar month. And today, in relation to people who actually have mental health circumstances, they're told to fast on these 3 nights of what they call the full moon, we call it the white nights, and to spend some time in nature. There is a weak hadith, but we now have empirical evidence, so we would say the meaning is true, which tells us, in which the Prophet ﷺ is said to have said, that the one who spends their time in an oasis on the white nights will come back with a cleaner lungs, a cleaner body. It's a hadith stated by Tabarani, if you want to check it out. In the book of Hazzaz, this is actually Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, in fact, actually makes a commentary about this in relation to the 13th, 14th, and 15th, and this aspect of breathing. You see, we now know that oxygen is released the greatest amount in these 3 nights. These great scholars and our beloved Prophet ﷺ didn't have to go into the empiricals about all of this. They just told us what to do. But today we have, I'm not quite sure, is it that we have become so lazy, or we have become so suspicious that we need some empirical evidence before we do anything? To the extent where, even if we have the empirical evidence, we hardly do anything. Right? And when we have a space like this that actually has been provided for you, you have already a community here to take such a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as opposed to taking what's a psychological antidepressant drug? Xanax, right? Are you a doctor or are you a taker? To take, instead of taking that, there are people who need those kind of things. I'm not saying that people don't. What I'm saying is, by far and large, people simply need to just get out there and benefit from the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What I'm more importantly focusing on is not so much only you, but you need to facilitate, serve others, that they may benefit from the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second project that I wanted to share with you is probably more telling. It's called the Ansar Project, and it has 2 parts to it. It has a Feeding the Homeless program and a Halal Food Bank program. In the Feeding the Homeless program, no more than 15 to 20 people a month come together, and they have been feeding people for over 15 years. And we have been able to distribute approximately 12,000 kilograms of food, which has fed approximately 72,000 mouths. 15 people a month. I see over here 10 times that amount of people. That would equate to potentially 720,000 people. If we were to simply have certitude when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, ta'awanu al-birri wa taqwa, to cooperate with each other on matters of good, and that raises in ourselves consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And secondly, the project on the Halal Food Bank. In Australia, for example, many of the food banks do not in fact have halal food. So this is provided to impoverished Muslims in Australia, but anyone in fact can have this food. It's not only for Muslims, but any Australian. And the program in fact is not only in Australia, but beyond. And we have been able to pack 20,000 boxes, which has served 7,000 families. And again, it's no more than 10 to 15 people a month. My dear brothers and sisters, I'm not speaking to tell you what we are doing. What I'm saying to you is only 10 to 15 people can do this. That they can serve and they can bring about well-being for themselves. As we have seen, the people who serve, the people who are generous, have well-being in their lives and they live longer. But the point being is, those people who are suffering will also have that opportunity as well. That they will come to a level of stability in their lives, inshallah ta'ala, where they can also say, I do have a Lord, and I want to know my Lord. And they might also say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide everyone. And in the end of my brief presentation, I want to also quickly mention who have been involved. When I look at these, when I speak of students, who are they? They're not very different from who we are here. From distress to de-stress. I have a whole number of students from around the world who are corporate executives, stressed out, come and pack food bags, food boxes, feed the homeless, plant a tree. And they very regularly mention that they have de-stressed themselves and have started to feel purpose in their lives. I, for example, mention expectant mothers because expectant mothers these days do have a struggle. There are a whole number of struggles in that regard. When we speak of postnatal depression, for example, etc., that these mothers particularly have been involved in projects of this nature and have found well-being. I'm not quite sure what else can we do other than to give people pills to try and get some level of stability and well-being. And we're talking about radicalized youth. And we have this problem here in Malaysia as well. You are not immune from this particular problem of radicalization. That they have been involved in projects of this nature, and they have been able to come to an understanding that they have a greater purpose than designing to kill somebody. That they have been designed to have a greater purpose than themselves designing to kill others. These are the impacts we can make, my dear brothers and sisters. An important point that I want to make is that every one of these people, from the corporate executives to the radicalized youth, have all become seekers of sacred knowledge. They have been able to unify their life. They're not living a schizophrenic world of worker and masjid prayer person. They have been able to bring it together and live it fully. As a Muslim, as a human being who is a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where their work has improved, where their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and their experience of closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been experienced. And this is not only in Australia, but it's also happening at the ends of the earth. And I'll ask you, all of you, to really consider the importance of entering into service. If I could be as bold in saying that, and I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but you have Hawi al-Khairat here. Start serving from here. You have a center here. You know, bring some food, start packing them up, and do it properly. Remember, we talked about purpose and design and due process. Don't make it into a chaotic wedding reception where everything's everywhere. Plan it properly and go and feed the homeless. Go and generously change the lives of those who are less fortunate than ourselves. They will help you. The poor will help you to become a better human being. Jazakumullah khairan. I'll stop there, and inshallah ta'ala we are able to have some discussion, some questions and suggestions that you could make in making our community better and certainly ourselves better, but particularly coming together united to cooperate in good and in seeking consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Jazakumullah khairan kathiran, Imam Afroz, for the informative and good talk that, about the ecological understanding of our life. I've got here two questions. I'll read them out for you. This is a message from phone number N0700. Very successful person, lived with purpose, correct me if I'm wrong, like Imam Shafi'i lived 45 years, or even Bruce Lee lived 32 years, but their contributions towards the world is very impactful and over the years. Is it because they have fulfilled or completed their purpose in this world early compared to to other great people?
It's a very important question. It's a very important reflection that the greatest people who walked on this earth lived a short life because their life was full of blessings and they fulfilled all those blessings really, completely. We tend to need a little bit more time. I hope you get the point. It's a reflection of also, if I could talk about seeds. Imam Ahmad records in his Kitab Zuhud that he was given a gift of a seed of wheat which was bigger than the seed of dates. And on the seed is written that this seed used to grow when there was justice on this earth. So longer time is probably or longer longevity is probably a reflection of the amount of time we really need to purify ourselves. It's interesting how the secular world sees this as a medical advancement, right? But the reality is that when our purpose is fulfilled and we have done what we have done, of course, if you know what your purpose is, right? And they knew what their purpose was, and they did it with excellence. And once they did it, they returned to their Lord. They actually wanted to return to their Lord. They've done their job and they went. I mean, we have scholars who, without going into the details, because some of these things can freak some people out, because we don't know when our death is. But there are empirical recorded evidences of scholars who prepared their kafan and made their own ghusl prior to Fajr, then lied down on their bed after Fajr and died. Rahmullah ta'ala alayhi. Inshallah ta'ala, that helps us to understand. We shouldn't worry about the fact, well, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to live till 90, I need a lot of time to purify myself. That's not the point. The point is that it's about the social reality that we live in, the world that we live in. And this is a critical point for us to actually recognize that, when we are fulfilling our purpose, it no longer is about how long you're living, but how well you're living.
I'm really interested in your statement with regards to the native walk. Alhamdulillah, I've been blessed. The native walk. Alhamdulillah, I've been blessed with the opportunity to live in Scotland, and I also was guided by one of my teachers, Sheikh Abdulaziz Frederick. One of the things that, because occasionally we get questions about how do you prove the existence of God. his answer to the question is, come and follow me. So what he would do is he will take 2 people to go to the mountainous area of Scotland. Beautiful place. I'm not sure whether you've been to Scotland or some of these beautiful countries. You can breathe the fresh air and really look into the majesty of Allah's creation. And then it really bring down to earth, bring down home the message about the beauty of the creation and what's been created, and also our role in this world to serve the community and serve the creation around us. Now, I have a question for you, and I think that one of the problems with us is some of us have the intention to serve the community. The only problem is shyness, timidness, especially among the Malaysians. How do you provide remedy or counteract this particular issue?
Interact with Australians, no, just kidding. One of the amazing virtues that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored the Malaysians with is the reality of humility. Right? That's without a doubt. But every virtue has the other side of the coin as well, which becomes the negative of that. And often I also notice that out of humility and out of shyness, that and we're talking about the context of Australia and Malaysia, you have people who actually also pull back and they don't want to get involved. As opposed to, for example, countries like America, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has endowed them the outward ability to be confident, but they use it negatively in oppression. Right? So every side has these 2 sides in this regard. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything in pairs. So one of the things that I can say to you is this. Let me use an analogy. If we imagine all of the great scholars of our times, they were scholars, and I'm not talking about education. I'm not talking about people who became educated with a PhD or whatever. I'm talking about people who have the sacred knowledge and became an heir of the Prophet ﷺ. These people would only be a scholar because of their humility, because of the very fada'il, the very virtues they ultimately inculcated in their lives. Imagine if Imam Ghazali said, look, I'm humble and I don't want to go in front because people might say that I'm show off, and so I'm not going to teach anymore. Right? You would have Ihya with you. Right? Imagine Imam Shafi'i. Right? You wouldn't be Shafi'is, you don't be Hanafis like me. Not kidding. So they didn't do that. Why? Because they understood the difference between the reality of living in humility and the responsibility to fulfill the gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you the gift of knowledge, you have the responsibility to share. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you the gift of limbs to serve, you have a responsibility to serve. The beloved Prophet ﷺ said that when Bani Adam, when the son or daughter of Adam alayhi salam, when he wakes up in the morning, every joint in his body owes charity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this no longer becomes a question of humility or shyness. It becomes a question of responsibility. So if we just turn our paradigm and think from the perspective of that I have a responsibility to fulfill. Just like in Malaysia, mashallah ta'ala, the familial connection and your sense of responsibility for each other. Think from that perspective that we also have a greater family out there, by which we actually also have to serve them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq and open much doors and paths for facilitation and ease.
Along that line, I think one of the issues I've also noticed in Malaysia is we seem to be more polarized than what we were, say, 20 years ago. It's an unfortunate event that's occurring, and I feel that it's getting worse. How do we, I think you've rightly mentioned about the problems of seclusion within among the Muslim community, and I feel in a way we're not sharing the mercy of Allah to other human beings, other other racial group, other religious group. How do we go about, I know this is not an easy question, how do we actually bring about those changes?
That's another extremely important question, and the simple answer, or the crux of that answer, is that we have to live Islam. The reason why that is not occurring is because we are not actually optimally living Islam. Let me share an example of statistics of our neighboring country here, Indonesia. We are very happy as Muslims, doesn't matter where we come from, to share the great statistic that Indonesia is the largest Muslim populated country in the world, right? Or the largest population in any country of the world being Muslims. But do you realize that 7 out of 10 of all humanitarian work in Indonesia is actually carried out by Christian organizations? 7 out of 10 in a Muslim country. I was speaking to somebody just a couple of days ago about Malaysia, and he said that why do we as Chinese don't become Muslims? And he said that because we don't see the example of Muslims for what they claim about Islam. So we have to live Islam, and we have to raise our standard. Not that we have to raise our standard to a higher level, we need to raise our standard to a reasonable standard by which we need to actually live by, inshallah.
That's quite interesting actually, because recently during a family gathering with my kids and my wife, I actually asked a question to my children about how do they feel coming back to Malaysia after being abroad for a number of years. I was quite surprised that my daughter, who's 11 years old, made this particular statement. She enjoys living in Malaysia and so on. The only issue she has is, she said to me, look, in the UK, people do not go to akhlaq classes, but they have akhlaq. Unfortunately, in Malaysia, we have akhlaq classes, but people don't have the akhlaq. And I thought that was quite a surprise statement to make. Now, continue to the other questions I've received. From number 3278, Assalamu alaikum, I would like to ask how to balance dunya and akhirah.
The question, how to balance dunya and akhirah. The question presupposes that they're two separate things. Just look at this world as part of a journey to the akhirah. There's no balancing between one and the other. So when we say, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ, O Lord, give us the best of this world and in the hereafter, and save us from the punishment of fire. When we say, give us the best of this world and the hereafter, what we mean is, give us the best of this world for the hereafter. So, live your world in this world that is planting seeds for the yielding the fruits of the hereafter, as at the very least as much as possible. That everything that you do, as many things that you do, is actually directly building your akhirah. At a higher level, do as many of those things. At the best of those levels, inshallah, if Allah give us tawfiq, that you would do everything that is building your place in the akhirah. They're not two different worlds. When you start to see that way, you're going to live in a world of schizophrenia. Right? Don't do that. This world is simply a bridge that is taking you to the hereafter. It's part of this journey, it's not a separate part. So if you go and live as I'll speak about doctors, but this obviously doesn't apply to all doctors, so I apologize to use that as an example, but it's an easy profession to see because it's a very service-oriented profession. So very often, this applies to all, so you have to start digging into your own profession to understand this. If you look at doctors, often, not all, often it's a well-paid job, it's a well-paid profession, and often the doctors are very busy in their profession, and then they take their time out as a holiday to, I don't know, Lombok in Indonesia, being the Muslim Bali, so you get that bit right. But then you go there and you destroy the environment, you treat the workers as second-rate people. There's no reality behind you living this Islam properly. You come back to your country, your own land, your own city, and you go back to your work. But if you actually made intention that your work, even if you're a plumber, that you would be a plumber that will fulfill the sunnah of our beloved Prophet ﷺ of saving water, and then you live it, you'll be the best plumber. And your work of this world has become the work of the hereafter. That's how you need to completely transform your lives. Whatever you are doing, you have to ask the question, how is this actually, in reality, doing anything for you for the hereafter? If you can answer that question with sincerity and have a positive answer, inshallah ta'ala, it's a pathway to Jannah.
Alhamdulillah, I'm getting lots of questions. The next question will be is really, I think, quite touching. Salam, I'm not a practicing Muslim, but born in a very culturally Muslim family. I'm taking antidepressants now because some days are just so hard to live. I'll try to go out in nature as you suggested, but how do I know that I will find a purpose when I do that? And the next question to it is, how do I start moving away from my reliance on antidepressants? Alhamdulillah.
اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من الهم والحزن ونعوذ بك من العجز والكسل ونعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل ونعوذ بك من غلبة الدين وقهر الرجال. First and foremost, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring ease upon you, facilitate openings that not only remove the burdens but also opens the pathways to much goodness from you. Know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't forsake any of His creation, any of His servants. But sometimes we tend to feel that we probably have turned away from Him. So your perseverance, your constancy to constantly reorient yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be the greatest means of healing. To constantly seek from whatever you're doing and make that a basis by which you get to learn about your Lord. For example, to reflect on the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Asma'ullah Husna, go through that and see that manifested in this world and thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for these things. So when you are in nature, and I'm glad you are taking the advice, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring much good for you and healing from that. That when you go there to see from the signs, as you were saying yourself, and the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His Jalal and His Jamal. See both of them. The more you think of Him, the less you will have depression. The less there will be a burden upon yourself. And inshallah ta'ala, by your constant remembrance of Him, dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring you healing. I do want to mention the following. Be in regular dhikr, number one. Be in regular fikr, number two. Fikr here, to contemplate, to see the manifestation of the attributable nature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How He is manifesting being Ar-Rahim. How He is manifesting being Al-Adl, being the just one. Reflect on this, make tafakkur on this matter, have fikr. Number three is to actually involve yourself in amal al-salihat, in the very things that we're speaking about over here. Khidmah, serve others. Don't see yourself as a victim. but see yourself as a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and serve from whatever little that you can do. In these things are healing. And number 4, to have good suhbah, to have good companionship, so they can support you and you can support them. When you do all of these together and regularly, you will notice that in fact you will have a mysterious way to be able to come out of the various of the very illness that you may actually experience, or the condition that in fact you actually experience. In relation to your medication, I would say that you would continue to do so, because removing yourself from medication is a progressive pathway. Talk to your medical practitioner, take advice from your doctor that these are the things that you want to do, so that you can actually have a better monitoring of what's happening to you, so that then the doctor can allow you to progressively reduce your medication. So don't become a doctor yourself, and don't let others tell you, by the way. So I've obviously criticized the medical world out there, or the pharmaceutical world out there. But don't ever think that it's all evil. In it is good. And you need professional advice and good advice. Go to a Muslim doctor who understands these things, and they will help you monitor this. I myself know that in Australia this is able to be done. You can go to doctors, medical doctors, who will actually prescribe you Xanax or whatever else. And if you work with them, they will show you a pathway of the various actions that we have in fact spoken about. That's how, inshallah ta'ala, you will be able to remove yourself, or at the very least reduce the amount of medical help you're taking from a pharmaceutical drug. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to tell you to actually stop it. That's a wrong advice. Whenever somebody comes to you because you've got whatever problem you've got, and he's a butcher or taxi driver or an imam, and says to you, stop taking this medicine, understand that when people react like that, they actually really are ultimately rejecting the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In pharmaceutical medicines, we were pioneers of pharmaceutical medicines, right? But how the world has turned around today, and we as Muslims have become so extreme. I know somebody who has actually gone through a significant illness, and he went and researched all homeopathic and naturopathic pathways in relation to the person's illness. And the person was not, and the person is very objective, and they were not able to find proper empirical evidences of the claimed healing that these naturopathic and homeopathic world actually teaches us. I am the first one to actually rely on homeopathic and naturopathic world. I'm telling you that. What I'm saying is that this idea, this polarized extremist idea, only homeopathic, no pharmaceutical, is a problem. Islam has what is referred to as allopathic, which is pharmaceutical, as medicine. This is Islam. We have homeopathic, and does anybody know what's the third? It's osteopathic. Exoskeletal and muscular, for example, what we speak of as massage. Those are the 3 ways that we actually find healing. And one of the things I can recommend to you is that if you go to a good practitioner of homeopathy, that they will probably advise you with certain kinds of massage, therapeutic massage that actually allows you to actually have better blood flow as well. And so I'm not a doctor, nor am I a homeopathic consultant. What I'm saying to you is to actually be objective, and then seek those advice that is needed in relation to reducing and potentially eliminating the medication, by taking also the spiritual steps that in fact I have recommended.
Next question, Salam Imam. I would like to ask your opinion on serving community through political parties, where the fund might come from government or people's money, or from corporate funding, but the credit then goes to the political party. This is no hold bars question time. You can ask whatever you like.
So briefly, if you could explain to me what the question means. What is it trying to say, sorry?
Basically, they just want to know, is it allowed to serve the community through political parties? Because at the end of the day, it's not the individual who get a credit, it's the parties that serving.
So they mean political parties, not government.
Political parties, yeah, serving, yeah.
Bismillah. I'm going to be open, because I'm leaving in 2 days. Stay away from political parties. Work with governments of the day. Be a civil and a positive citizen, but do not support political parties. Stay away from them. And if there are individuals who support the work that you do, then accept that with the intention of the individuals. But I don't know the dynamics over here as to how all of that works, but why do you think a political party actually wants to give you money? Why? You have to ask those questions. And I don't think when it comes to charitable work, selfless work, you need to keep it as clean and as pure as possible. And be a person who has principles. Do not reject the people and the persons, but not the system that today political parties actually have created. Have the himmah, have the courage to work independent of those circumstances, because the real problem in today's world is not religion. Today's real problem is political parties. We as Muslims have to move from a political Muslim to a civilizational Muslim. From a politically charged Muslim to a civilizationally contributive Muslim. And there's a big difference between the two. So, to quickly end there, be a person who is more independent of forces that ultimately cause more trouble than good. And particularly the fact that actually, I'll give you an example. When we talk about the Halal Food Bank in Australia, we don't accept a single cent of money. You know why? Because it's very easy for people in Australia to simply basically do a credit card money and barakallahu feekum, jazakumullahu khairan. But it's more work for a Muslim to actually, well, any human being, to actually go to a shop, buy something, and then come and give it and pack it. We have to make mujahada. We have to make striving and struggle. These easy ways out will not actually get us anywhere. So whether it's political parties or anything else, work more where you are making the mujahada, where you're doing the great work. If the money is coming from proper, inshallah, ethical sponsorships and things like that, that's great. But I think we have to be very careful when it should come to political parties.
Jazakallah khairan. The next question is, could you please elucidate the relationship of ihsan and servitude towards attaining what has been said in the ayah, Ya ayyuhan nafsul mutma'inna irja ila rabbika radiyatan maradiyya.
So, when we are going to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Oh my content soul, return to your Lord and enter my heaven," who will be this person? This person will be the one who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in another part of the Quran, that neither your wealth nor your children will benefit you on the day of judgment, except the one who comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, except the one who comes to Him with a purified heart. How do we purify our heart? We purify our heart through service, through servitude. Why? Because it allows you to fulfill the very hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he says, internalize into yourself the attributable nature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. تَخَلَّقُ بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. Which means that you have to go out there and become merciful for you to ever know the merciful. You have to become merciful for you to ever know the merciful. You will never know. We have, as you have said, as a question I mentioned, as you were mentioning, that we have reduced our Islam to book Islam. Right? We go into classes and we have to be told, mercy, rahmah is this, and we read it and we go back home, mashallah, rahmah. Nothing's going to happen except that you would go out there and act on that knowledge. And when you act on that knowledge, you purify yourselves. When you purify yourselves, you are then calling upon the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For no one enters the Jannah. No one. Except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will يَتَغَمَّدَنِي بِرَحْمَتِهِ, except that He will engulf you completely by His mercy. So your action, your service, is a proof that you want His mercy. Our action is not proof that we want Jannah. Our action is proof that we want our merciful Lord's mercy. So you have to go out there and act on those things, and this is how we will in fact prepare ourselves to return to our Lord, with whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased. Radiyatul Mardiyah will be pleased, to whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "O the content soul, return to me and enter my paradise."
I'm getting lots of questions, so I'll try to limit because of restriction of time. We have just restrict to two last questions. Assalamu alaikum, Imam. First of all, I'd like to apologize if my first question is rather disrespectful. Is it morally just to use the needy to fix our own internal issues? And the second question, may I please know the ways, I think the second question probably best asked to a doctor. I'm a doctor, but I'm not going to ask any medical questions. I'm not going to answer any medical questions tonight. So going back to the question again, is it morally just to use the needy to fix our own internal issues?
So the question is, again, has an assumption, and before I answer the question, just like you didn't want me to be offended, I hope you don't get offended by me answering this question. That question supposes that you are actually using a poor person. The question suggests the person does not recognize the reality of the world. That in fact we all are a means to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are not using each other, we are a means to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the reason why when you are actually serving others, they are actually helping you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is manifesting in front of you an opportunity to serve Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't ever see a poor person as an impoverished person who is a wretched person. Because on the day of judgment, remember, if you only think jasad, jismi, bashar, skin deep person, then we've lost humanity. Outwardly the person is suffering, inwardly the person is being purified. You need the situation to be purified, they're already being purified. On the day of judgment, they're standing at a higher station than ourselves. So you are not using them, and they're not using you. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created means. For example, in the same analogy, it would be like me asking the question, am I using water? Am I exploiting water to drink and fulfill my thirst? No. I am actually utilizing a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has put in front of me. The water is a means. So everything has its purpose. And even the poor have a purpose with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's a blessed purpose. It's not a purpose of us being users of them, or them being users of us, but that we being means for them, and them being means for us. The thing is that when you fulfill each side, when we fulfill our duty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by that means, it is by that means that by which actually we're actually coming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the fact, for example, as a wild example, not a wild one per se, but it's part of their reality, we all are poor, so our reality, that when we are actually in a state of need, if we would only remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's so true. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, Ya ayyuhan nas antum fuqarahu ila Allah. All human beings are in complete need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That poor person who outwardly is poor, when they recognize that, they're the best of human beings. They're the best of human beings. So we have a physical and a metaphysical world. Zahir and batin. And we can't forget that. If we are only going to see what's happening in the outward world, which is this world of technology and science, material science, then we see what's happening out there. It's destroying humanity. But if we understand the metaphysics, that we are all connected to each other, and we are essentially helping each other to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we come to the realization who we are and what our purpose and what our place is, how we are identifying ourselves. So we are not actually using them, and they're certainly not using us.
Our final question tonight, Assalamu alaikum. Yesterday you talked about paradox of choices in finding a spouse. I think that some of us experience it when it comes to choose what cause we want to serve, be it environmental, education, and spreading the knowledge of the deen. One day we want to defend a village from being demolished, and the next day we want to be involved in defending the honor of our sisters, especially when we saw how our sisters in France are being treated. What would be your advice to us who experiences this confusion?
A very simple answer to that question is to understand the difference between influence and concern. We should all be concerned by the limitless number of problems on this earth. Limitless number. That's our concern. We know the realities of this world. But you're not going to be able to change all of them. So you have to understand, you have to first understand yourself and say, well, what can you actually influence? What are your gifts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by which you can influence something? So I'll give you a quick example, if I could just use myself as an example just to make a point about it. I know a little bit about the environment, so I'm going to do something about the environment. I actually don't know anything about, for example, how to rehabilitate the youth from drugs. I don't know anything about it. So I'm not going to waste my time there. Right? So understand yourself, what's the gift that what are the gifts Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, then sharpen it, and then influence change. Inshallah ta'ala.
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khairan kathir for your talk and also answering all the questions. The two announcements I'd like to make. First of all, food will be served tonight, so don't hurry back to go home. The ladies could proceed to the left side of the hall, to the right side of the hall, and men to the left side of the hall. There are plenty of food, so please enjoy the hospitality. The other announcement is about the feedback forms that we've been given. We will be really grateful if you could fill them up and leave it in the cookie jars been left around the building. Finally, we've talked about so many issues tonight about how we serve the community, how to serve ourselves, and the greater goods of humankind. Obviously, you are in a special place, the Heart Community Center. There are lots of activities being organized in this particular community center, and I would encourage everyone to participate, regardless who you are, what's your background. I think this is a way in which you could channel your energy, your desire to change things around you, more importantly yourself. Sorry, I've been given some. Do you want to talk about brief? Yeah. So just to brief you a little bit about HARC, it's a non-profit organization. It requires, it doesn't make any profit whatsoever. What it's essentially aimed to do is to gather energy, time, effort that you have for the community work. There are many activities that's been arranged by this center. One of them, sorry, I just need to get the. There are other exciting programs being arranged. One program is called Stay Productive, Discover the Hidden Wisdom. So do join us to uncover the productivity wisdom from the prophetic traditions and scholarly practices to meet the complex demands of the modern world. Do watch this space and visit HARC website and yeah, just HARC, you know, if you Amanah Hawi Al Khairat. So if you have any questions about the activities of this center, please approach the Board of Trustees. I think they are wearing special badges tonight, so do ask questions, and I'm sure they're more than happy to answer your queries about the activities. Any other? I think finally I'd like to end this majlis with a statement. This is found on epitaph taken from a gravesite in Westminster, London. It goes, when I was young and free, my imagination had no limits. I dreamed of changing the world. As I grew older and wiser, I discovered the world would not change. So I shortened my sights somewhat and decided to change only my country. But it too seemed immovable. As I grew into twilight years, in one last desperate attempt, I settled for changing only family, those closest to me. But alas, they would have none of it. And now, as I lay on my deathbed, I suddenly realized if I had only changed myself first, then by example I would have changed my family. From their inspiration and encouragement, I would then have been able to better my country, and who knows, I may even have changed the world. So by that, I'd like to invite Habib Abdurrahman Al-Haddad as the chairman of Haq Community Effort or Center to recite dua. تفضل مشكورا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وكرم على سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا محمد. اللهم نسألك العافية في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم نسألك العافية والعافية والعافية في الدنيا والدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وعملا متقبلا ورزقا واسعا لا تعذبنا عليه. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من علم لا ينفع ونعوذ بك من عين لا يدمع ونعوذ بك من القلب لا يخشع. اللهم الله يا الله يا الله يا كريم. We ask Allah to bless this moment among the brothers and sisters of Islam. We ask Allah to make this moment acceptable to Allah, and that this be the reason why we will enter Jannah, inshallah, and we will end this world Husnul Khatimah, inshallah. And we ask Allah to keep this brotherhood and the sisterhood among ourselves to be good and to do good, and to be useful to serve the society, and to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with cleanness of niyyah and the best of purpose, and so we become well-being in the dunya and akhirah, inshallah. And we ask this Allah to be asked through the tawassul of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that all our prayers should be answered. For those who are ill, that they be cured. For those who are weak, that they be strong. For those who are poor, let them be adequate. For those who are in need, let them be satisfied with the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. على الدنيا وحد النية والنية الصالحة وإلى حضرة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. شر الفاتحة.
بسم الله الحمد لله رب العالمين مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. تقبل الله منكم.
إنه منكم تقبل منكم. So